Hey guys, welcome to Belin Youth Group at Home edition. It's Jenna. I am so glad you guys are with us, joining us for our third and final close to this series called In My Opinion. First, I just want to say thank you guys for all the love and encouragement as Tony and I prepare for baby Bush. It is soon upon the horizon. So thank you guys so much. I also want to continue sharing with you guys about this awesome series, and I have a question to get started. And this is the question: does your school have cliques? I mean, maybe even your clique has a clique. Like maybe you're even in the band kids and the clarinet section or the percussion section is a clique. Do you have cliques? Do you have a sense of judgment, like an idea or a thought about these cliques? Like maybe those cheerleaders are, or those smart kids are, those band kids are, those kids who live in this specific neighborhood are, you fill in the blanks. I think we tend to make judgments about people, right? Maybe you even have some about church as well. Those sixth graders are, those eighth graders are, those girls who sit at this table are, or we tend to kind of have this perception, and maybe you're filling in those blanks. And you know, it's not just teenagers, middle school and high schoolers who do it. Adults do it too. We tend to stereotype people. And sometimes we take that one thing we think we know about them and totally make it encompass who they are. And the reality is that is not genuine. Can you think about a time maybe when someone surprised you, or maybe it was the opposite? Somebody pigeonholed you and who you were, and then were surprised to find that you were so much more than their opinion about you. I can think of one of my best friends in high school. When I first met her, I didn't realize what great friends we would have been. And it's just, you just don't know everything about someone unless you get to know them. Do you agree with that? I mean, I remember being in choir and sharing a little bit about my family's story with someone, and then being so surprised at everything that my life was. And they just had me in a box. And maybe you've been put in that box, but maybe you've put others in that box too. So we have opinions about people. Oftentimes they're based on assumptions or our expectations of what has happened in the past. Sometimes it's actually based in our jealousy or insecurity, like those people would never be friends with me, because you think they're really awesome and maybe you just think that you wouldn't be accepted, so you cast them a little shade. For whatever reason, when it comes to people who are different or we perceive as different than us, we let our judgments and opinions of them affect how we view them. And that's a problem for a lot of reasons. For starters, our judgments usually aren't nice. We tend to think of ourselves more highly than other people. That's kind of like a human nature thing, right? Not only does that mean that we're judging and seeing other people negatively, but it also means that we're not giving them a chance in the future. We also kind of will just write them off, like we think we got them pinned down, and so we don't get to know them ourselves. And here's the problem. When we do that, when we pigeonhole people, we aren't seeing the whole person. I'd like to share with you a story in the Bible that I really think can help us with this tendency we have to pigeonhole people and place judgment on them. And that story is found in the book of John. And it was written in the view of John, who was one of Jesus's closest friends. He was a follower. He was one of the 12. He walked alongside Jesus. What an amazing thing. And John tells this story about Jesus in the book of John. So when we pick up at this story, Jesus was teaching to a group of people, which were several religious teachers, and they interrupted him with a question. And they say this: "Teacher," they said to Jesus, "this woman was caught in the act of adultery. The law of Moses says to stone her. What do you say?" So basically, there was a bunch of religious leaders, and they come to Jesus with this woman who was caught sleeping with somebody who wasn't her husband. And back then, the law said that they would be stoned to death. That basically, these men would throw stones at her until she died. Crazy, right? Sometimes I think I live in a really crazy time, but that is crazy, right? So, yikes. These religious leaders thought they knew exactly what Jesus was going to say about this woman, and they were so sure that they interrupted Jesus to make a point of her and to kind of get her in a little trouble too, right? And so they thought they were right about this woman and that they were so much better than she was, right? So now we can all admit that we tend to be like those religious leaders, not necessarily wanting to stone people, but we tend to think that we are better than others. We kind of said that before. We tend to think of ourselves more highly than other people, and we give ourselves a little more grace than we might somebody else. So we let our own opinions and our own judgments define who they are, and we slowly move ourselves away from them because we tend to see what other people do or who they are much differently than the way we see ourselves. And we kind of create this space, this gap that separates us from them. And that's certainly what these religious leaders were doing with this woman. And that's probably, Jesus probably knew exactly what these leaders were up to. And instead, Jesus did something that nobody expected. The religious leaders kept demanding an answer, so he stood up again and again. "All right, but let the one who has never sinned throw the first stone." Then he stooped down again and wrote in the dust. Jesus challenged these religious leaders to look inward at themselves and their own sin instead of judging others. Jesus told them that the one who hadn't sinned and who had never messed up or made a mistake or done something wrong was the only one that had the right to throw a stone at this woman. And you could imagine that nobody else fell into this category except for Jesus. And while they were standing there, the religious leaders felt convicted, and their argument was shut down completely. Instead of throwing stones at this woman until she died, they all walked away. Soon, it was just Jesus and the woman. And here's what happened next. Then Jesus stood up again and said to the woman, "Where are your accusers? Didn't even one of them condemn you?" "No, Lord," she said. And Jesus said, "Neither do I. Go and sin no more." While the religious leaders had judged this woman on only one thing they knew about her, Jesus saw something else. Jesus saw this woman as so much more than one bad decision. She was so much more than just one opinion or judgment or experience. Jesus knew the whole story, and he loved her no matter what. You see, nobody in the story was really who everyone else thought they would be. Everyone judged this woman as bad, but Jesus showed us that she was worthy of forgiveness and having a future, and that there was more to her story than just the sin. And then the religious leaders, Jesus showed them that they were no better than this woman. Jesus demonstrated that the truth is that we are all created in the image of God, and that makes us all worthy of love and forgiveness. That's the way Jesus saw others, and he calls us to live in the same way. He wants us to remember that there's more to others than just our opinions of them. You see, reducing someone down to just one judgment on you can cause you to miss so much. Maybe that band kid is really one of the funniest kids you've ever met. Maybe those people who sit at that table that you think will never be friends with you are some of the kindest people you can meet. Maybe that person who goes to church who looks like they have it all together are struggling with some of the same issues. And patterns that you are. Maybe you find that you have a lot more in common with people than you had thought. So remember, there's more to others than just your opinions of them. You might be missing out on so much about someone by simply letting your opinions and judgments define them. This week, I'd love for you to try one of two things. So one, worry about yourself. Whenever you find yourself about to make a judgment of somebody else, remember what Jesus said to those religious leaders, right? None of them were out without mistakes or flaws. So instead of focusing on someone else's behavior or interests or choices that you don't understand, focus on what you're doing and how you can better live out the life that God has for you. Number two, remove the judgment. Think about who is in your world that you've judged or formed an opinion about without truly getting to know them. What if instead of judging them with what you think you know about them, you let the facts define them? What if you only focus on what you know to be true about them? Now, while you may not know much about the other person or group of people right away, you do know this for sure. They are children of God, and we all have value and more to our story. We're all made in God's image, and we're all worthy of forgiveness and a future. So instead of making assumptions, think of them with compassion, love, kindness, and grace, just like Jesus. Remember, there's more to others than just our opinions of them. Oh, hey. You want to say hello? No, you want to play peekaboo? Do you want to look at the camera? All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us for Youth at Home Edition. It was so great having you, and I will see you real soon. Say bye, Kaden. Say bye-bye. Say bye-bye.